Welcome back to Homesteading with the Zimmermans, where each week we give you another episode of what's happening here on our Northeast Iowa 21-acre homestead. My husband Alvin and I have been married for 25 years, and we have 7 children. 5 of those children still live at home. Our oldest 2 are married and no longer live at home, so this means we also have 2 son-in-laws and 1 grandson so far. So on our 21-acre homestead, we seek to preserve the self-sufficient lifestyle of our Old Order Mennonite heritage for the next generation. We involve the children in every aspect of the homestead, from raising and harvesting our own meat, gardening and preserving to fill the family's larder, or preserving the dairy from the family milk cows, plus all the many other skills that develop the character and integrity and relationships of a family that seeks to bring glory and honor to their Heavenly Father. Good morning, everybody. In today's video, I'm going to be talking all about milk and clabber, which is fermented milk, and making butter, and there's way more than fits into one video when I start talking about milk and my love of the family milk cow. But today we are going to make butter, and I'm going to show you how to make cultured buttermilk, or how we make cultured buttermilk. And I also have an exciting giveaway for you. So before we go much further in today's video, I want to talk about our sponsor for today's video. So you've heard me talk about the Backwoods Home magazine a lot, but what you may not have known is they have a sister magazine called Self-Reliance. And I'm still digging through the winter issue of Self-Reliance, and what's so beautiful about the printed magazine is it goes right here on my side table, and anytime I have a moment to sit down and read, it's there. I don't have to pick up my phone and get distracted by the 1,000,001 other things that want my attention. I can be more intentional about, I'm gonna sit down and page through the magazine. And I don't know if you're like me, if you pick up your phone and you go to look for a recipe or something, I'm going to get distracted and I'm going to start scrolling, which is not something I like to do. So the articles that I'm still digging through in this issue there's a whole section about how to use your winter squash. And I have some winter squash that definitely need to be used. So I'm going to be getting some new recipe ideas from that. And then I wanted to show the boys, they have a section on winter canning, which has some new recipes. But I want to get the boys started on building me some more bluebird houses, because the ones that we do have up are falling apart and they've rotted. So that is a good article for the boys. But then what I think you might be interested in, there's an article on small scale chickens, like raising your meat chickens. And this is almost identical to our very first chicken tractor that we had for raising meat chickens. So if you haven't yet checked out Backwoods Home or Reliance Publication and their sister magazine, Self-Reliance, the link for your discount subscription will be in the description of this video. So again, the link to get your discount subscription, because you watched my video, is going to be at the very top of the description. And I'll also send this out. I'll send this link out in Monday's email for you, in case you're watching on your TV and you can't get to the description to purchase your subscription. I'll send it in Monday's email for you. So this morning, while I wait for the kids to bring the cows in, I am going to set up my cream separator. All right, there you go, Harrison. Well, these are the cones where the milk goes through. And they have these little holes in, and you have to alternate them. So normally I use my cream separator when our cows have just freshened and I'm getting like 8 gallons of milk a day. And then I just run it through the cream separator about every other day or every day, and then I make a lot of butter. And hang on, I know what I did wrong. So I haven't used this in a while. This has to go on. Hang on, I know what I did wrong. So I haven't used this in a while. This has to go on, and then this. But because Katiana, the lady that I got the cream separator from, she wrote a book all about clabber and like fermenting your raw milk. So everybody that pre-orders her book on clabber, and I'll be talking more about this later, will be entered into a drawing to win a cream separator. Now there was a time, excuse me while I struggle to put this together a little bit. It's been a couple months. Nope, this one goes first. There was a time when I had goats, when I was milking goats, that a cream separator was at the top of my list. But then when I got cows, I just reverted to the way that Grandma taught me, to skim milk. But then this past summer, when we had 2 cows that freshened within a month of each other and we were getting so much milk, it really did help save my refrigerator space, because I could bring 8 gallons of milk from the barn and run it straight through the cream separator, and then I'd have a couple gallons of cream, and the skim milk went to the pigs. And I really do like my cream separator much more than I thought I would. So I can tell by the barn lights that the kids are probably waiting on me to come help them milk. And we've just got this all set up and ready to go. All right, we're gonna go milk, and then we're gonna bring the milk back and pour it through the separator. First things we're going to do is we're going to get some warm water running through here just to rinse everything out. I'm gonna let that come up to power. So your milk needs to be warm for the separator to work. And you know, milk coming from the cow is about 92 degrees. So that's perfect for running through the separator. And if you had, if you wanted to separate sheep or goat's milk, you could easily bring your chilled milk back up to temperature and run it all through the separator. And I just don't, reheat my cow's milk, because if I have cow's milk that is chilled, the cream has already separated and I can just, skim it from the top. So there goes our skim milk into the bucket for the pigs. And here comes our cream. Okay, I wanted to show you how much more cream I get when I put my Jersey's milk in there. She's definitely our big cream producer. Look how easy it is. And probably by far my favorite thing about the cream separator is this. Just adding cream to my coffee. Almost like it's straight from the cow. And I've done that too. Adding a little skim milk for foam, and it doesn't get much better than that. It's really, really good. I have a cousin who's a potter, and I got this Valentine mug from him. I'll link his pottery shop in the description. That's good. You want to taste that? Is it good?
Yeah, go and have it.
So now that I've run all of my milk through the cream separator, I'm just gonna pour some water in, and this water will help to push the rest of the milk and cream through the separator. And I'm not worried about the water diluting my cream because the water will go where the skim milk goes. Okay, so we got about 2 quarts of cream from that 3 gallons of milk, which is a little less than what? It's actually a lot less than we get in the summertime. But that's what we expect when our cows are, number one, far into they're over 6 months into their lactation, and they're about 5 months bred, so about 5 months pregnant, and it's winter time. So this, I'm happy with this 2 quarts of cream because this will make close to a pound of butter. I'm just gonna take this apart. And I'm gonna get the rest of this cream, just gonna let it run out of here into my cream bucket. I'm going to take all these cones apart, and then when I wash everything, see, you can see, I know you probably all know how a cream separator works, but it spins the milk really fast, and because the fat is heavier than the rest of the milk, it goes to the bottom or to the top. Anyway, it goes through different holes and it separates it. When it spins, the skim milk goes through the holes faster than the, I don't know, I'm making a mess with explaining it, but fat is heavier and the spinning separates the fat from the skim. So I am just gonna use this top part. That was my biggest issue with a cream separator. And the biggest reason I drug my feet about it was because I'm like, oh, I've heard that they're such a pain to wash, but It's really not true. It doesn't take me barely 10 minutes to get everything cleaned up. And I just use this as my wash basin and wash it all up and rinse it, and we're done. So I'm just gonna let all of this stuff air dry here until tomorrow morning. And then if I'm not gonna use it again, I am just going to store it all tomorrow morning. So yesterday morning, maybe it was the morning before, I strained my milk and put it into this container. And the reason I did that is this is my other way of collecting cream. I put milk into a container with a real wide mouth, and then it's real easy to collect all the cream from it. And I'll bring you closer and show you my other method of scraping cream. So this is my traditional method of collecting cream. It's just using a ladle. But like I said earlier, my problem with collecting cream this way, especially in the month where we have an abundance of milk, is that it takes up so much room in my refrigerator to, chill 8 gallons of milk to the point where I can scrape the cream off the top, because the cream doesn't rise to the top until the milk chills. So as the milk chills, it separates. So you want a good 24 hours of chilling before you go to collect the cream. And so I don't have enough refrigerator room when we're getting 8 gallons a day to chill, all of that milk in order to collect the cream. So that's where my cream separator comes in real handy. But when we drop down to only getting like 4 gallons of milk a day, then I just use this method. Those last bits of cream just float right into there. And what are we gonna do with all this skim milk? Well, we're gonna let it sit here in the shop and it's gonna clabber, and then we're gonna use it to help feed our pigs and chickens. So now this is the cream I just skimmed off of yesterday's milk, and this is the cream that I collected today from today's milk. So I guess it's gonna be butter making day after all, which is really good. It's been quite a few years since we've had our milk cows dry at the same time. But this year we'll have about a month where both our milk cows are dry at the same time. So I'm not quite sure how we're gonna get through those months. So anyway, I'm happy that it's butter making day, because I would like to have a lot of butter in the refrigerator, because I really don't want to have to go buy butter. I would like to have a lot of butter in the freezer and in jars. And I'm going to show you how we make our butter shelf stable, because we went through a season here recently where we needed all the freezer room that we could get, and I knew I had like between 20 and 30 pounds of butter in my freezer. So I am going to show you later how I canned that butter and made it shelf stable. So it's time to turn our cream into butter, and you want your cream to be not refrigerator cold. So you want it to be between 50 and 60 degrees. And the reason for this is when the fat molecules are cold, they, number one, don't agitate as easily and don't stick together as easily. When they're around 50 degrees, they agitate faster and they stick together sooner, which means it takes less time to turn your cream into butter. So today I had some cream that was already warm and I had some that was chilled. So I just added all of my cream together, And I always search through the refrigerator and make sure I don't have any pushed to the back. And I've got about 1.5 gallons of cream to turn into butter today. So once I see that we've got little chunks of butter, I'm going to let the churn keep going for like 2 minutes longer, because it's going to take those little chunks of butter and get them hanging together into big chunks of butter. And it also releases more of its buttermilk if I let it churn a couple minutes longer. Now, you don't want to do this if you're using a blender or, like a KitchenAid mixer or something, because you can start incorporating the butter back into the buttermilk, and it's really hard to come back from that kind of situation. But you can do it with an actual butter churn, because a butter churn does not break up the chunks of butter like a blender would. And the other thing, if you want to handle the butter with your hands, make sure that your hands are wet. Anything that you're going to put the butter into should be wet. I always rinse my hands with cold water because that keeps the butter from sticking to my hands. And then I just fish all the butter out of my butter churn. I have very little tiny pieces of butter floating, so I really don't need to pour it through a strainer, because I can easily fish out my big pieces of butter. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start working all of the buttermilk out of the butter, just the way my mom and grandma taught me to. And to do that, I just take a little chunk of butter and kind of fold it over. I just kind of keep folding the butter over itself over and over, and you can see the buttermilk gather in the bottom of my dish. And then once I've got all the buttermilk out, I start rinsing it with cold water. And I'll just use the same kind of movement with cold water until my water runs clear. This just means that all the buttermilk is released from the butter and it's ready to store. If buttermilk remains in your butter, it'll get sour quicker, or it'll go bad sooner, because the buttermilk will culture within your butter, and then it'll just give your butter a sour taste. It doesn't mean your butter is ruined if this happens. If I get butter that tastes a little sour, I'll just mark it for baking. And then I massage it to get all the water out of it, and then I add some salt. You don't have to add salt if you don't want to. We just like our butter salted. And I just put all the salt, rub all the salt into it, mix it in, and then I have about 3 pounds of butter in this batch, so 1.5 pounds of it fits into this quart box, or close to 2 pounds. So I get 1 ready for the freezer and 1 for the refrigerator. And then what I have left is this buttermilk. Basically what this is at this point is just skim milk, because all of the fat is, removed from it, and it's really not buttermilk yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to culture this buttermilk. And I'm taking a little bit of cultured buttermilk from my last batch, adding it to the fresh cultured buttermilk, and we're just going to let this set on the counter until it is cultured. And if you get Katiana's book, you will learn all the science and all the, recipes behind clabbering or culturing your milk. After 12 hours, my buttermilk was not yet cultured, and I decided I want to put it into a jar where I can cover it, because if the boys do dishes, I do not want them to get dirt into my buttermilk. I had a little bit of leftover buttermilk, and I decided to just set that outside for the dogs. You ready to look at my buttermilk? So it was already cultured last night, but I was too tired to film this last night. So anyways, this is what cultured buttermilk looks like. And you can get the same result even without adding a starter like I did. It just takes a little longer. So now I have 2 quarts of cultured buttermilk for baking. And the thing is, this works. This is the same nutrient profile as kefir or kefir, those expensive, breakfast drinks, or those expensive drinks that you can get. So the more you know about raw dairy and the more comfortable you get, the less money you're going to spend on nutrients that are coming from outside of your community. And the shorter your food chain becomes, the more comfortable you become with getting nutrients like this from whole foods. You don't have to go buy kefir. You don't even have to buy kefir grains if you don't want to. It's just fermented. So when you add kefir grains, you're adding a strain of bacteria to your milk and telling them what bacteria you want to multiply. It's the same way with this culture. I added some clabber or cultured buttermilk to this, telling it that that's what I wanted it to grow. Now, I have another cultured dairy. While we're talking about cultured dairy, so this is sour cream. Now, you can do this one of 2 ways. You can get a sour cream culture and start making your sour cream that way, or you can simply let it sit on your counter, on your kitchen counter, until it cultures. So you can see this is separated here, right? So all of this up here, this is my sour cream, and this is what it looks like. That's cultured, home cultured sour cream. It's sweet, a little bit tangy, and oh so good. So that's my cultured sour cream. So what happens when something gets cultured is the lactic acid bacteria, which is present in raw milk, starts breaking down the sugars. And when this happened, it changes the pH, it changes everything in the milk. It changes the nutritional profile, and it actually is easier on your blood sugar. If you're watching your blood sugar, try fermented dairy, because like I said, the lactic acid bacteria eats the sugar up and changes the nutritional profile where there's less carbs available to your body. And so my friend Katiana wrote a book all about the art of clabber, and clabber is fermented dairy, and she learned it from her grandma, and her book is so full of good information. If you're interested in raw dairy, and if you're comfortable, there's a whole generation of people that have become comfortable with raw dairy, and for those people, this is the book for them, because this takes your raw dairy and takes it a step further. Are you ready to get more nutrition from your raw dairy? Are you ready to stop buying even more things from the grocery store? In Katiana's book, it's going to cover it all. Sour cream, buttermilk, cheeses, all of that. And for everybody that pre-orders the Art of Clabber book, their name's going to be entered into a raffle to win the cream separator. So don't forget to check out her book. I'll post a link to her book, and I'll put it in Monday's email too, for those of you that aren't sure where to find the links. I apologize for not having mics today. So most of you, if you've been here a while, you know that I don't have fancy filming equipment or fancy, recording or editing equipment. I'm just a mom trying to feed my family, trying to love my family the best that I know how, and set up my camera on my tripod, my $10 tripod, using my iPhone to film when I'm doing something that I think might interest you. But number one, I'm a mom and a homemaker and a homesteader, and where my mics are today are at school, because I've been helping at the drama department at our school, and they needed the mics for some recording purposes. So I am without mics, but that's okay. That is a very insignificant part to our family life, is my missing mics that didn't get returned, and my filming. So I could talk for many YouTube videos on my love of the family milk cow and the nutrition that we get from milk and fermented dairy and all of that. Yes, last week I talked a little bit about our food pyramid and how we use meats, how we use, the protein that we raise, which is meat, and dairy as the very bottom of our food pyramid. I personally don't drink or use a lot of dairy just straight. I try to make sure that I am consuming my dairy fermented, just because as we get older, we're a little more insulin resistant, and there's a lot of sugar and carbs in, raw milk. So I try to make sure that the dairy that I consume, that most of the dairy I consume is fermented, so that it doesn't spike my blood sugar levels. So what I'm going to make for myself before I head off to school this morning is a smoothie using this cultured buttermilk. And the reason I'm doing that is we churned the butter, right? So this is low fat, and it's low sugar now because it's already been fermented. So it's low carb, and yet it has a lot of protein in it. So I'm gonna make myself, and I don't have to add collagen powder, and don't even get me started about whey protein powder and how bad that is for you. But anyway, that's a subject for another story. I'm just gonna use this buttermilk and some fruit and make myself a smoothie. All right, there we go. There is breakfast. Now this is gonna taste tart, but there's something about tartness or bitterness that we need for waking up our digestive system. My grandma, as she aged, she always took something called Swedish bitters, and it was herbs, very bitter herbs, and she'd take them before every meal, because she said getting those bitters into her stomach helped get her digestive juices flowing, and she would digest the meal better. So if you need to add a little something so this is palatable for you, that's okay. But I would suggest, using less and less sweetener or whatever you're going to use to make this palatable, and start getting accustomed to eating things that aren't sweet. Start getting accustomed to cultured dairy by stretching your palate and eating and drinking things that are tart and bitter, because that's actually what our digestive system needs. Aside from all the probiotics and the healthy bacteria that are in fermented dairy, that tart and bitter flavor, it already starts in your mouth, and it makes your saliva glands overactive when something is tart. You know that feeling, and all of that extra saliva goes along down, and it just helps your digestive system. So this is black raspberries from the garden and cultured buttermilk from our cow. And this will carry me through until about lunchtime. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how I turn my butter into ghee. And what ghee is clarified butter, which means that you have heated it to the point where it has released all of its milk solids, or the milk that's still in it. And because no matter how much you massage your butter and work it, there's still going to be a little bit of milk left in it. So I'm just gonna put this frozen butter into a 250-degree oven, and I'm gonna show you what happens next and how I'm gonna can this butter. All right, so after about 40 minutes, you can see that white stuff. That's the milk solids, and that's gonna all come to the top. And then the longer you heat it, the more that's gonna fall to the bottom. The more toasted those milk solids get, the heavier they get, and then they'll sink to the bottom. So we're just gonna keep an eye on it. And some people will just skim this off the top and then keep their clarified butter in the refrigerator. So the reason that ghee is better than regular butter is because regular butter has a flash point of about 350 degrees, which means if you're going to put it in a cast iron pan, you're going to reach that flash point very quickly. And what happens when a cooking oil or a fat like butter, when it reaches its flash point, it starts to break down and it can become harmful to your body because it starts releasing free radicals, right? So with ghee, when it's clarified like this, its flash point is at 485 degrees. So that makes it perfect for cooking in our cast iron pans because cast iron cooks hotter. So the reason I know it's time to get my butter out is because my milk solids that are left floating on the top are turning a little toasty, and I don't want the butter to have a toasted flavor, so it's time to get it out and get it into jars. I'm going to start by scraping these solids off the top and putting them into this container. So next, we're going to start canning this butter, and I'm doing something that you'll rarely see me do when I'm canning, and that is I'm heating my jars before I fill them, but that's because I'm not going to water bath or pressure can this product today. So I need for my lids and my jars to be hot. My ghee or my clarified butter is already hot, because the way that we're going to seal these jars is simply by when the butter in the jars cools off, it's going to create a vacuum, and that warm rubber seal is going to seal down onto the jar because of the vacuum that happens when something goes from hot to cold. And so it's important that my jars are hot and my lids are hot, because I want the biggest temperature change over a long amount of time that I can get. So if I were to put this butter into cool jars and use cool lids, I wouldn't get such a big temperature contrast, and then I wouldn't get such a good seal. So because I'm not water bathing or pressure canning this, this is just simply called open kettle canning, and this is the method that you'll use whenever you open kettle can. You'll want warm jars or hot jars and hot lids, so that your product doesn't cool down too fast. I'm also straining my butter through a cheesecloth or a cotton dish towel because I don't want any little bits of milk solids to be in the jars, because that can cause the ghee to spoil if I have milk solids in, because milk will ferment and spoil. And also you'll see me wiping the rims of each of my jars, and I'm just wiping them with a paper towel, because that's the best thing I can think of to make sure there's no grease whatsoever on the rim of that jar. And then I'm just put the lid on and turn it tight and let them seal. So by the time I was done with this project, I had 20 pints of beautiful clarified butter. That was all produced just from our cows eating the free grass that grows here on our homestead. And my clarified butter is a little grainy because it was salted butter that I started with. But it's not a big deal to us. The graininess goes away as soon as the butter melts. And since we're just using this to heat, like in our frying pans and things like that, nobody even really notices the graininess except me. But if I had to do it over again, I would probably start with unsalted butter, just because it gives a more beautiful end product.